Keith Boag is with us this morning because on a day of such momentous political content and discussion, I really always like to turn to Keith, our former CBC News chief political correspondent, now a CBC contributor. But he was with us from Virginia this morning, and I'm really glad to have you back, Keith. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Heather. Nice to be back with you.
Well, on a day of very substantive matters to discuss, Keith and I were going back and forth in our email last night, and I was just sort of getting the headlines of what we were going to talk about. And Keith's note to me begins, I don't think anyone should be surprised by what happened. To me, it was entirely predictable. Can you explain that, Keith?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously Donald Trump has a role in inciting all of this, and we've seen that he has that is a part of his character over many years. That's one of the reasons we should have expected it. But the roots of this are very, very deep, and they lie back really in the 1980s when Newt Gingrich, then a congressman, began to tell Republicans that their best path to success was to tell constituents that they couldn't trust their government, that it didn't work for them. And that got them into the 1990s, got them elected. It fired up a right-wing media that was first led by Rush Limbaugh on radio and then followed up by Fox News in the late 1990s and into the noughts. Then we get to 2010. 2 years after the election of the first black president, you have the formation of the Tea Party, which is anti-government, essentially. It pretends to be, for tax reform and lower taxes and so on, but there's a lot more to it than that. And this is the element of the Republican Party that Donald Trump exploited. But he brought to it his own talents for demagoguery, his own talent for believing the lies that he tells to people, for telling them that they can believe whatever it is they want to believe. And now we come to his defeat at the hands of the voters, and he tells them you can't believe that either. You can't believe the institutions of Congress. You can't believe the media. This is the moment that you have to take matters into your own hands to save the republic. And what he does is he turns these people who don't believe that America is working for them anymore into patriots for attacking the government. And yesterday, he asked them to go to the Capitol Hill and express themselves, and they did, and they literally attacked the government.
And even his daughter, Ivanka, used that word patriot as she talked and sent social media messages about this as well. So what has developed and then what was unleashed yesterday, what is your read on where it will go? I mean, that anger that these people were clearly expressing, what happens when Donald Trump leaves office? Does it just disappear, Trumpism?
No, it doesn't just disappear, again, because he didn't create it. He only exploited it. And also because, well, he disappears from the Oval Office. He doesn't disappear from political life in the United States. But more than that, I mean, you say these people were angry, and in some respects, I guess they were. But what I saw were a lot of people who were just delighted to be inside, delighted to be leading an insurrection against a government that they thought was correct, or a system that corrupt, or a system that they thought that was corrupt. They'll look at yesterday as a victory, no doubt about it. I think that they will wear it as a badge of honor to have participated in what happened in Washington on January 6th. And where that goes, I don't know. Whether it's good or bad, I think it's pretty clear it's not going to be good. It's going to take a long time for the country to overcome the divisions that are within this society right now. And the reason for that is that there are two different attitudes towards truth and fact and what the story of the moment really is. And how do you get around that when one side is being fed a lot of misinformation, garbage, by the media that it consumes, and the media that it consumes is some of the most powerful in the country?
The people who are going to have to respond to this and deal with it, let's look at what their role now should be, Keith. Joe Biden, soon to be sworn in. He's talked about the priority for him, the work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, so the political system itself. But in terms of unity and bringing those, healing, as you've just talked about, what does he need to do?
Well, I mean, he's a very experienced politician. Some would say too experienced and too old for this job. But I think that what he has shown over the last, since he won the nomination, is that there is a desire in this country for someone who speaks the language that Biden speaks, which is a language of experience. And he needs to use that now because he knows so many of the personalities very well on Capitol Hill. He needs to use that to enlist their support. Now, I'm not sure I would have said this on Tuesday, But something happened yesterday that Republicans have to pay attention to, and Biden is showing them perhaps the direction of a way out, if not, in fact, the complete way out. And they probably need to pay attention to this now after what they saw yesterday. You could hear it in the words of some Republicans that they really saw this as a step too far, and well, they should.
Well, you could certainly see it in the eyes of Mitt Romney as he was listening to some of his fellow senators continue on with their objections. I mean, they were, just completely.
But you're finally hearing people like Senator Lindsey Graham saying, this is too far for me.
Yes.
He should have said that a long time ago. You're seeing people resign. A lot of this has to do, of course, with the fact that they know there's no future with Trump anymore. So it's safer to abandon him now than it was on, say, November the 2nd. But this is the glimmer of opportunity I see for Joe Biden. It's just a glimmer because so much work has to be done. But I think it's that Biden recognizes that he can't do this alone, that this problem grew out of the Republican Party, and ultimately it's the Republican Party that is going to have to deal with it. And dealing with it means stop pandering to it, stop trying to exploit it for your own political gain. We continue to see that among some members such as Senator Josh Hartley, who believes he has a path to the White House if he can inherit Trump's constituency. But the trouble is what it takes to inherit that constituency seems to be, by definition, bad for the country. If you look at yesterday as an example of what those people want and believe in.
Senator Ted Cruz seemingly doing something similar in terms of going to that same constituency for 2024 in their minds.
Sure, all of them were willing to exploit it and take advantage of it when they felt it suited their purposes. And they may deny that they had any inkling that it was going to end like this, but if they didn't have any inkling it was going to end like this, they should open their eyes. Of course it was.
Some, even after the violence, came back and continued to object. Can we come back to Donald Trump? Again, we haven't heard from him this morning. Perhaps his Twitter account remains locked. But there were people yesterday very forcefully demanding that he go on television, that he address the nation, but also address his supporters and tell them to stand down, that they had gone too far. That maybe he's the only one who can put a stop to that. I mean, do you foresee that happening? And is that, in fact, the only way that this is going to come? The temperature is going to be lowered sufficiently, at least in the short term.
It's kind of a catch-22 because you have to demand that the president says something because that's the president's role in a moment like this. But because the president's President Trump, you know that whatever he says is probably not going to be useful, and you'll be lucky if it isn't more harmful. And yesterday, it's a tough call to say that there was any use to his videotape at all, and that it wasn't, in fact, in a sense, rewarding those who would attack the Capitol, saying, I love you and I understand your hurt and so on. I mean, there was no chastisement really in all of that. There was no condemnation of what happened yesterday. But what are people supposed to do? He's the president of the United States. He has to say something. You just can't trust him to say the right thing pretty much ever.
Keith, thank you. As always, our special CBC contributor, he's in Virginia this morning. And again, thanks, Keith.